Hey everyone, Fundamentals of Finance here, and welcome to the first official video of this channel. And as you can see, today's topic will be equity versus enterprise value. What exactly are the differences between the two, and what exactly is their significance, and how exactly do you calculate them? So let's hop right into it with a general high-level overview of what exactly they both are. So equity value represents the value that the market has assigned to a company based on the number of shares it has outstanding and based on the price of the share. So in layman terms, what does that mean? Well, that means that not accounting for liabilities and obviously potential assets the company may have, that is the value that it would cost me if I wanted to buy 100% of the stake in a company and be the sole stakeholder, the sole owner. Equity value is the price that it would cost me in order to do so. So, how do you calculate equity value? Well, as I mentioned, equity value essentially just equals number of shares multiplied by the price of share. And it's not a complicated formula. It should make intuitive sense because obviously if we're trying to determine the market value or the value the market has assigned to a certain company, it makes sense that the formula for that obviously would be the number of shares outstanding versus the price of the share. So for example, if there's 100 shares outstanding and there are 10 total shares, the equity value, also known as market cap, for that company would be $1,000. So you could easily do this calculation yourself if you were to just search up the number of shares and price of share for any corporation which you wanted to evaluate. But what are some potential flaws with equity value, and why is it maybe not the most common when it comes to valuation in corporate finance? Well, a few things. Equity value does not take into account any debt the company has taken on. It also doesn't take into account any assets the company may have, especially in the form of cash. So that brings us to enterprise value. Now, what exactly is enterprise value? So enterprise value essentially is the true cost it would take me to actually buy a company, not just be the majority stakeholder. And the reason you'll see enterprise value used a lot more frequently when it comes to valuation in corporate finance, especially in terms of banking or private equity, is because when you're working with mergers or when you're working at acquisitions or when you're looking at valuations, you don't just want to know what the market value of the company is, rather you would want to know how much would it actually cost you in capital to buy said company. So there's a few things that we have to do to get from equity value, which again is just number of shares times price of share, to enterprise value, which is the true cost of actually buying the company. So let's walk through the formula together. So first, you would take market cap. Market cap, by the way, is the same thing as equity value, just so that there's no confusion. So market cap, and then you add debt. And the reason that we add debt is because if I were to buy a company, say that that company owes $1,000 to debt holders because it needed to issue debt to raise capital, I, as the now primary owner of the company, would be liable for paying that $1,000, which is why we include debt when we are calculating the true value of buying the corporation. Now, the next thing is we need to add minority interest. Now, what exactly is minority interest? Well, say I'm a corporation and I have acquired another company, or I am the majority stakeholder in said company. If I own 50% or more stake in said company, then that would make me a majority stakeholder, which means that I would have to consolidate the income statement and other financials. So we use minority interest in enterprise value to represent the amount of the company that we do not own. For example, say that I, as a company, own 70% of another company. Even though I would consolidate the financial statements, this minority interest the 30% that I do not own has to be there to show that even though the financial statements are consolidated, we do not own 100% of the company. Now, the next thing that you have to add is preferred stock. Marker's being a little weird. Preferred, I'll just go on the side a little bit here. Preferred stock. Now, why do we add preferred stock? Well, preferred stock is treated as a liability because if a company were to be liquidated, preferred stockholders would have ownership rights to dividends over other common stockholders, which is why when we are looking at the true value of buying a corporation, we would put preferred stock into the equation, i.e., they can often be subject to be paid dividends earlier than other stockholders, which is why we put it as a liability. Now, here is the important part, and here is the critical part in really understanding enterprise value. We have to make sure that we subtract cash and cash equivalents. And to best illustrate, I think I'm out of the frame. To best illustrate why do we do that, let's think of a basic example. So if I were to buy a house, right, and let's say the house cost me $1,000 to buy. That $1,000, I guess you could think of, would be the market cap, or maybe what the market value of the house is. But now let's say that there were a lot of issues with the house, such as application issues. Maybe there were some things that were broken that needed fixing. And let's say I had to use $500 of my own income to fix said issues. You can think of that as debt. That would put the total cost thus far of actually being the owner of the house for me at $1,500. But let's say that I found a pot of cash. Let's just say that I found a bag of money. And that bag of money had $800 in it. So now we have thus far, with the actual value of the house plus the fixing of utilities, we have spent $1,500. But if we subtract that $800 in cash, we now have only paid $700. And you can think of that example very much the same as a company. That is why enterprise value is referred to as the true cost of buying a company. Because when you buy the company, you are liable for the debt, and you also get access to any cash that they might have in reserves, which is the key difference between the two. And this is definitely a formula that I would try to commit to memory, as it is definitely going to be a common interview question, and it's very important in the world of corporate finance. That'll be all for today's video. I hope that you guys found value in this, and that's it for now. Bye-bye.